I am losing $5,000 a month on this one Airbnb. And my goal in this video is to share some of the mistakes and pitfalls that I made during this entire journey and make sure that you learn from this just as much as I learned from this so that you don't make this mistake. It all started where about a year ago, my partner and I decided to start buying off-market properties. Now, typically you buy real estate in two ways. One, it's either on the market, that's when you see properties on websites like Zillow, and they are publicly for sale and anybody can go and buy it. And then the second way is through off-market. That means it is not on the market and maybe the property is not even actually for sale. Now, why would somebody want to sell their property off market? A lot of times sellers don't want to pay closing costs, commission fees to the realtors. Typically those commission fees are about 6% of the purchase price. So if they're selling their house for say $1 million, just to work with some easy numbers, they're paying $60,000 just in commission fees, not including closing costs. They might have to make some renovations because of the inspection, whatever is negotiated. Long story short, there is a lot of sellers that don't want to deal with all that hassle. Sometimes they are motivated to get a quick close, especially if you're buying their property all cash. A lot of times sellers are in a position where they have to sell, and they have to sell off market because maybe the property is not habitable, so the banks won't finance it. It could be that the property has some legal issues where it's not up to code. Maybe they're going through a divorce, unfortunately. Maybe they just went through a bankruptcy. Life happens. There's always a ton of reasons as to why people have to sell. And this is where real estate investors can buy the property for say 40, 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar, sell it to an investor, right? That's called wholesaling, or they can just flip it themselves. So long story short, my partner and I decided that we wanted to go and implement the BRRRR method. That is where you buy the property, you renovate it, you rent it to somebody, you do a refinance cash out, which means you pull out at least most or all of the cash that you put into it, and then you repeat the process. And the whole concept here is that you would own real estate without putting or having any of your money into the deal. And if you did, it would be very little. You are basically forcing the appreciation, right? You are buying a property that needs some work, renovating the property, which now means you've increased the value of the property, pulled out your money through a refinance cash out, and then you go and repeat the process. It sounds easy, and some people are implementing this successfully and some people are not. Long story short, my partner and I put together a cold calling team of one person. I hired a virtual assistant in Pakistan that had experience cold calling landlords. And cold calling is where you're calling a landlord and they're not expecting a phone call because their property is not for sale, and they're basically saying, hey, I see your property here on 123 Main Street. Are you considering selling your property? And some people hang up, some people get upset. Long story short, we were very lucky. Sort of. On the very first call that my VA calls from Pakistan, he calls a homeowner in Joshua Tree. And the owner said that he would consider selling his property if he got top dollar. And then my VA asked, he said, well, what is top dollar? He said, I would want 1.1 million. Now, this property is worth probably about 1.1 million, or at least at the time. Long story short, my VA says, hey, Jorge, I got a lead for you. At the time, I am in beautiful Cabo, Mexico with my beautiful family having a great vacation. I see the WhatsApp message from my VA in Pakistan. He says, hey, this seller is interested in selling the property. I was like, wow, that was quick. I quickly get in a call with the seller, start asking him some questions. What's the condition of the property? How soon do you want to sell? You know, what number are you looking at? He confirmed that he would only be interested in selling it at 1.1. Long story short, I come home about 3 days later. My partner was also in Spain, so he gets back to California about around the same time, and we go and look at this property. We drive to Joshua Tree. It's about 2.5 hours from Los Angeles, and the property is amazing, right? It's got a beautiful pool, a jacuzzi, huge backyard, sitting on 2.8 acres of land, and it's overseen it's got a beautiful view, beautiful, like 10 out of 10 property. We submit an offer at 1.1, which is what the seller wanted, and we open escrow, which means that once you open escrow, that means that the seller accepted our offer, and technically only we can buy the property. The seller cannot back out at this point. Now we have the ability to back out if there's a reason such as, we couldn't get the financing, right? That's called a financing contingency. Maybe the inspection went really wrong and there was a lot of issues. That's called the inspection contingency. And then you have the appraisal contingency. Like, what if the property value doesn't come in at what the price is? And that's exactly what happened. We got the appraisal, and the appraiser said that the property was worth about $900,000. And when it comes to a situation where the property appraises lower than what the escrow is, which is the agreed amount, we as the sellers have to come out of pocket those $200,000 in addition to the down payment and closing costs, etc. So my partner were like, there's no way we're gonna put that much money. That's just crazy. So we told the seller, hey, this is not gonna work out for us. We wish you the best. And he says, wait a minute. My partner and I are like, yes. And the seller says, well, what if I bring the price down to the appraisal amount? So that's what happened. He brought the price from $1.1 million to $900,000. So that's what happened. On top of that, interest rates were drastically increasing in that time. So our mortgage payment was going to keep going up and up and up the longer it took to close. Long story short, we ended up doing some more price reduction due to some other things that came through in the inspection report. And we ended up buying the property for $850,000. That is a $250,000 discount. And so our total mortgage payment, when you look at the principal, the interest, taxes, and insurance, is $6,000. With utilities, call it about $6,300. So then we invest about another $30,000. Now this is a large property, 2,800 square feet of living space sitting on 2.8 acres. So when you look at the paint job that we did inside, buying all the furniture, appliances, decor, supplies, photography, paying the designer, the launching fees, because we had a team of people. I used to launch the Airbnbs when I started doing Airbnb 6 years ago. Now that I'm in a much better place financially and the value of my hour is now much higher, it makes sense for me now to just hire somebody to do all of that for me. So let's go over some numbers real quick. The seller actually paid half of our closing costs. So let's take the $850 purchase price times 20%. That's about $170,000 in the down payment. Plus we paid $10,000 in closing costs. It was actually $20,000, but the seller paid half. So now we're at $180, right? $170 for the down, $10,000 for the closing costs, $30,000 to launch the property. So we're all in about $210,000, which is, I know, a lot of money. Now, just to give you guys a backstory, we were actually buying this property as a vacation home with 10%. The financing didn't go as planned. And so a few days before closing, the lender said, hey, you're going to have to go 20%. And I was like, that's not what I wanted to hear. But at that point, we have removed our contingencies, which means that if we would have backed out, we actually would have lost our 3% EMD, the earnest money deposit. So we didn't want to lose that money. And at that point, we're like, you know what? We'll figure out a way to get a business loan and replenish our capital. So we move forward. $210,000 into the deal. At the time, as I mentioned earlier, interest rates are creeping up. They're coming up, like they're just going crazy. From the time that we opened escrow to the time that we actually closed escrow, which was close to 60 days, I believe our interest rate went from like a 5.7 to about a 7.1. It was something crazy, out of this world. So then, of course, we launched the property because according to AirDNA, this property was projected to make about 120 and maybe even a little more, because the properties that were making about $120,000, they weren't as nice, they weren't as big, they weren't hosting as many people as we could host. So I was projecting that we could bring in about $150,000 a year, which is about $12,500. And I did the math. I'm like, okay, we should be easily netting about $6,000 a month in net cash flow. So of course, even though we put in a ton of money, this deal absolutely made sense at the time. Now here is where things went south. Now that we are in a recession, because at the time, it wasn't clear or not whether we were going to be in a recession. In fact, we didn't think we were going to go into a recession like right then and there. All investors knew that a recession was coming, but we didn't know if it was in 6 months, 18 months, or in 2 years, right? So when we launched a property on Airbnb, the property was not performing. It still isn't performing. We still have the property today and we're losing about $5,000 a month. And here's the reason why this property is losing money. Now, right now I have a portfolio of 18 short-term rentals, and this is the only one that is losing money. And let me share with you why it's losing money and what you can do to make sure that your properties don't lose money. Because just to clarify, there is a ton of money to be made in short-term rentals in 2023 right now, during the recession and beyond, but you have to avoid the things I'm about to share. So before I do that, guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. So in real estate, we look at ideally 3 types of markets. You have primary markets, secondary markets, and tertiary markets. A primary market is like Dallas, Texas, San Diego, California, Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida, Orlando, Florida, right? These are like big cities with large population, large tourism. It's basically like the biggest city in your state where everyone typically wants to live, but it's really expensive because that's the best place to live. That is the primary location. Real estate prices hold their value stronger in primary locations. Rents are higher in these types of markets. You attract people with better credit and higher incomes in these types of markets. So ideally, when you're doing Airbnb or investing in real estate, period, you want to stick to primary markets. Now, a secondary market is like someone who says, you know what, I want to buy a property in Dallas, Texas to live in, but it's really expensive, so I'm going to go to, I don't know, I'm not that familiar with the area, but whatever city is like 30 minutes away from that main Dallas area. So maybe instead of buying a property for $800,000 in Dallas, I don't know what the prices are, but point is $800,000 in Dallas, now they're going to go and pay $650,000. So they're like, hey, we'll say $150,000. It's just 30-minute drive to work in the main area. But now they're going into a secondary market. Now, if they went like another 30 minutes in from the secondary market, now they're like an hour away from the main city. Now they're going into like a tertiary market. Okay, well, Joshua Tree, California is a tertiary location. And tertiary locations are the types of locations that struggle the most during a recession. Again, they attract people with not as good credit, not as good of a job, not as good of an income for people who are living there, or even for Airbnbs, because you have to drive really far. Again, from Los Angeles, it is a 2.5-hour drive to Joshua Tree. It is really far. And the biggest thing for you guys to take away from this video is in 2023, listen to my words, if you don't want to lose $5,000 a month, you want to make sure you only stick to primary locations, period. Even if it costs more, cheaper is not better. So stay away from the secondary markets, stay away from the tertiary markets, and only stick to the primary markets. Again, my other 17 properties are all positive cash flow during the recession of 2023 because they're not in tertiary locations. Okay? I have a few that are in secondary, and then I have a lot that are in primary. The secondary ones, like, you know, they're doing pretty good. The primary ones are making 2, 3, 4K a month in profit, all except that Joshua Tree property. With that being said, guys, I hope this video was beneficial, and I hope that you learned and took away a lot. I do have some links down below where you guys can check out my weekly free Airbnb trainings. And before you guys go anywhere, check out one of my other videos here and make sure you guys like this video. See you on the next one.